On ChinnyVision this time, 8 16-bit football games. If any one type of game dominated the 16-bit computer era, it was probably football games, especially because the 1990 World Cup and 1994 World Cups coincided with the 16-bit boom. So we're going to look at some Atari ST and Commodore Amiga football games, and we're going to start off with the first football game I had on my Amiga. Came as part of a Silica pack, Christmas 1992. It's Striker. Apparently, Striker is programmed by some of the people behind Special FX, who program lots of great 8 and 16-bit games. And it's released in 1992 by Raid Software. There's versions for the ST, Amiga, Mega Drive, DOS, and SNES. SNES version is supposed to be the best. We're looking at the Amiga version running on an Amiga 1200. Didn't get the best scores in all the magazines. Amiga Joker gave it 64%. Amiga Pearl gave it 76%. And said if it came out a few months earlier, it would have got a better score because of Sensible Soccer had since come out and completely changed the game. It's a very basic football game. You can set what team you want, one from 64. And it's also in this strange scaling third-person perspective. And it's very, very fast. And one thing you need to know is that basically, unless you're playing with one of the better teams, the computer teams will always beat you. Basically, we're here as England against Malta, and if you play one of the lesser teams, you will certainly get thrashed even by the very lowly computer teams. The ball sticks to your feet, and you just basically you can zigzag up the pitch and score a goal, especially if you can get the ball behind the keeper. That was always the trick. But there is an excellent replay system. You can use the function keys to slow down, reverse, and do various things, and you get a replay at the end of the match as well if you want, and all sorts of stats at the end of the match. But it's not very customizable, there's very limited competitions, and the audio is very, very sparse. There's basically only samples when you have a near miss or score a goal. But you do get those nice animations at the bottom. We finished that game England 4, Malta 0, and get lots of stats on the screen as well. And let's just play Scotland versus Germany with me as Scotland. And you'll see the problem. You've got no chance. If you're Scottish and you want to play as your favourite team, well, you've got no hope at all. The computer doesn't suddenly say, hey, you're one of the best teams, as some games do, and gives you an advantage. No, you get completely thrashed and get beaten 10-0, basically. And you won't get any possession either. The computer will just keep tackling you. Striker. It's an interesting, fast football game, but long-term, there's not an awful lot there. Manchester United Europe, and we're on the Amiga, and this was the follow-up to the original Manchester United game. This was released on all sorts of platforms, from the CPC to the Archimedes, and it was reskinned as John Barnes' European Football with a slightly more zoomed-in view, because presumably Liverpool fans didn't want to buy a Manchester United game, understandably. Fantastic Matt Furness soundtrack, which I could listen to all day. You select a cup competition, you play as Manchester United. There's various options to customise your teams, take people in and out of your squad, but every team you play against will have the same names. So basically, there's only one set of opposition. You can also play as a goalkeeper as well if you wish, and have two player where player 1 can be a normal player and player 2 can be the goalkeeper. Quite innovative. And if you play as Manchester United, you get all the Manchester United names up at the bottom. As I say, if the opposition are always basically the same people, you'll see Nicot and names like that coming up over and over again. Side-on view, very nice detailed graphics. Animation isn't too good. It's that little bit jerkiness that you don't get in some other football games. And I personally find this game quite fiddly. The passing's very easy, but it's quite hard to score a goal. But it does have a nice on-screen display there, Paul Ince, caution, professional foul. You've got red and yellow cards, people can be sent off. It's very stop-start. There's not an awful lot of flow in this. The computer will continually tackle you and things, it doesn't quite work. There you go, the computer has scored. And yet, it's one of those games where it's better as a two-player game, playing against a friend, as opposed to playing against a computer. That also applies to Striker as well. Another game. So now with 1 goal. Interestingly, Ryan Giggs is in the reserves, but you and Andrei Konchauskis as well. But you can put them into the main team if you want to, because this is about, what, 91, 92, something like that. Oh, Nikot has been sent off. You can't customise any of the names either. Oh, yes, there we go. Scored a goal. I think it's wonderful celebrations when you score a goal. 1 goal in the UEFA Cup, Mark Hughes. And there's lots of managerial options as well, configurations to change how you're playing. You don't even have to play the match if you're playing as a manager. You can change formations, change how the teams are set up. There's a lot of configurability here, but you can't change the names, as I say. It's a very polished football game, but ultimately one that I don't find too much fun. But hey, if you're a Liverpool fan who's already turned this off, here's one for you, Kenny Daglish's soccer match. Lovely picture of Kenny there. Quick word from Kenny. Not Kenny Cantor, Kenny Daglish. Spread the ball, says Kenny. A slightly disturbing image of Kenny there. Doesn't quite be uncanny valley kind of thing. So it's Chinny versus Bottom, because I've got to name both the teams. And off we go. And oh yeah, it's pretty horrible. The reviews of this were not very good. It was called awkward and frustrating, and that you can't execute passes as well, which is, yeah, completely true. In fact, the graphics remind me a little bit of Football Manager 2 on the CPC. So it's nice and colourful, but it's like an 8-bit game on the 16-bits. This is the Atari ST version, by the way. And those little animations there look quite nice, but they get pretty frustrating as they appear every time something happens. Every time the referee blows, you get a referee animation. We're going to try and score now, and I've done a Ronnie Rosenthal. Well, that's authentic for Liverpool anyway. It's a completely accurate representation of Ronnie Rosenthal playing for Liverpool. Oh, now I might score this time. Sampled audio when you score. Bit of loading, and Kenny Daglish is looking very pleased there with his Crown Paints top. It's no good at all. Microprose Soccer, back on the Amiga, is a port from the C64 of what Lemon64 regards as the best C64 game of all time. Chinny reckon. This version of the game is basically running on a 6502 emulator. So it is the C64 code playing on the Amiga with different graphics and different sound. And highly rated at the time, but yeah, it's not actually that good. Interestingly, upon re-release, once Sensible Soccer and other games that come out, this game got 15% in some magazines because everything had changed. And what makes for a good football game on the C64 doesn't make for a good football game on the Amiga. It's very cartoony. The opposition always spin round if they miss tackling you, and it's not really much fun. The pitch also seems quite small and your sprites are quite big. And while you get these novel replays every time, the VCR rewinding effect gets pretty tiresome. And yeah, what was good once quickly got superseded. World Championship Soccer, released by Elite, but originally by Sega, and we are on the Atari ST. It's a 1989 game from Sega, but released in 1990 as World Cup Italia 90 on the Mega Drive. So it's the official game for the World Cup on the Mega Drive, but this wasn't by Elite. This is a non-official game for the home computers, but was released to coincide with the 1990 World Cup, because everybody had a football game out. Even Arctic World Cup got re-released on budget under a different name. And so you do get a tune the entire time, but your players are like robots who smash into each other. It's not so much football as robotic football. It's unnecessarily small screen. Your players have no arms. Literally, I mean, look at them. They run around, they've got no arms. They're just a pair of legs and a body. The tune gets on your nerves very quickly. Executing a pass is incredibly difficult. The computer players run at you just like robots. They just smash into you and then head towards the opposition or your goal. And it's no fun. No fun at all. This was competing with Italy 1990 by US Gold, Italia 1990 by Virgin on the ST and Amiga, and it's nowhere near the level of those games. It has the top-down, up-down view as per Microprose Soccer, but it's not even as good as that. Ultimately, it's a frustrating cash-in on the 1990 World Cup that doesn't deliver the thrills that the admittedly mediocre arcade game did. Kickoff II by Dino Dini, Anko Software 1991. This is the follow-up to the award-winning game. You can create your own teams, even import player manager teams, got action replays, weather, and many, many configuration options. In fact, you'd never seen so many configuration options in a game, even down to having a plastic pitch if you want, and all different ways to play, up to 4 players, configuring your team, your formation. You can control every aspect of the football team here, and this was a first, other than what was in the original Kickoff, obviously. Now, I first played this on my mate's Atari ST, and he quite liked it, but I knew it was regarded as the top 16-bit football game, but I found it no fun at all, and coming back to it, it just involves pinging a game around a pitch with flickering lines and no discernible edge. You can literally kick the ball off the edge of the pitch without realising it's there, because the positioning is quite difficult to work out. You're told you should like Kickoff 2. Everybody, the magazines at the time, loved Kickoff 2, but it's remarkable how forgotten about it was once Sensible Soccer came out. Admittedly, like most of these games, it's more fun in 2-player mode. And I remember the magazines such as CMVG saying, oh, we had so much fun in the office. But look there, there's no actual boundary in the flickering on those lines. The game does look better on the Amiga. This is the Atari ST version. But ultimately, people have been overwhelmed by just how configurable the game is, and forgetting that actually the football itself isn't that much fun. That said, Kickoff 2 is still the best pinball game on the Atari ST. Sensible Soccer, and now this is version 1.1, because the first version I played, it fixes bugs from version 1.0 and introduces red and yellow cards. And people will say, oh, you should be reviewing Sensible World of Soccer. No, I wanted to go with the version that I had originally. Now, it's not quite as configurable as Kickoff 2, but you do have all these wonderful teams. You can set up your own teams and use the custom teams. I've set up 2. They're Chinny FC and top YouTubers, and we're going to play on an icy pitch. There's my team, and that's a wonderful screen compared to Kickoff, where you can set up your team and move the positions around, much better presented. Now, I played this on my mate's computer. By the time he got an Amiga, upgraded from the Atari ST, he had this game first. And it's odd, because I had a similar experience to Kickoff when I first played this, but there was something about it, something that drew me in, even though I found it fiddly. And then after a while, we started to get good at it, and we could perform wonderful manoeuvres and goals playing against each other, but also it's just as much fun playing against the computer, unlike most football games. Here we are, this is Chinny FC versus top YouTubers. Top YouTubers are attacking. Get the replay, you can slow that down if you want. Yep, straight across goal. Who scored that? Kim Justice. You can never leave Kim Justice alone, unguarded and unmarked. She'll always stick the ball in the back of the net. Oh, Stuart Ashen. I think that's Stuart Ashen who has scored. Yeah. Assist by Justice there. And that was an assist as well, I think. Somebody poached that by just heading it on. Yep, Zoe Kirk-Robinson in the 31st minute. It's so much fun. I've played this so much for this roundup. When you come back to it, you're not very good at it, and then you start getting back into it again and setting up moves, and it's so good. It shouldn't be really. You think the presentation is basic, but it's so full of character and the zoomed out view and the tiny sprites, and yet it's so good. And there's versions for so many different computers. Avoid the Game Boy and Sega Master System versions, however, because they're not sensible soccer. They really aren't. You need this on the Amiga or potentially the PC. There's an ST version as well, but the sound is much, much rougher. And the one thing about sensible soccer is there's audio all the time, there's crowd noise all the time, which none of these other games have. They've got spot effects. It gives you an enormous sense of atmosphere to hear the crowd noise go up and down. And we're on a grass pitch now. It's a normal pitch, so it's nice and green. Very simple goal there. Just hit it into the corner. Lovely stuff. Richard Shaw right there. There's nothing you can say about sensible soccer that hasn't been written or said in the 25 or so years since it was released. It is a glorious game. I can't say anything nobody else has said. It's a must-own game, and if you haven't played it, play it and give it a little bit of time, because you will get into it. And if you're coming back to it again, you just need a little bit of time with that control system, because after a few games you start to get a feel for it. It's difficult to describe, but simply put, Sensible Soccer is still one of my favourite computer games of all time, and my favourite football computer game. And finally, the 8th game is FIFA International Soccer, where it all begins to go wrong. On the Amiga, little were we to know when we first saw this previewed in, I think, Amiga Power, with its isometric view, this would be the harbinger of everything that went wrong with football games. Originally known as EA Soccer during its development, but also known as FIFA 94, this game was released in the weeks leading up to 1993 on multiple formats, and it sold so well in 15 days. It was released on December the 15th, 16 days. Well, Christmas couldn't sell, of course, so 15 days, that it became the top-selling game of the year. Isometric view, completely different from the FIFA games we're familiar with today. And then the screenshots, you looked at it and went, wow, this is something completely new, because it was. It's not bad, actually. It's not too bad. I find it a bit stop-start. I find it not as easy to set up interesting and fun moves as games like Sensible Soccer. It's certainly not the worst football game on the Amiga. We've seen far worse today. But ultimately, it doesn't really have the kind of place that Sensible Soccer and Kickoff do, which are unique, not unique games, but they are very much part of the era. It's the start of a massive franchise and interesting from that point of view, but also it's not an awful lot of fun, even though it has nice looks. So we've looked at 8 16-bit football games, and of course the recommendation is going to be Sensible Soccer. If you're watching this, you play Sensible Soccer all the time, I imagine, and if you don't, you should be, because it's truly wonderful. But I'd also recommend you check out Striker. The SNES version in particular is particularly good. It doesn't have the longevity of Sensible Soccer, but it's good for a blast. It's ultimately that once you've played it a few times, there is no more there. You can't keep on getting better at it like you can with Sensible Soccer and setting up elaborate moves. It's pretty much zigzag up the pitch and kick the ball in behind the keeper. Kickoff is a divisive game. I know people who've already clicked downvote because I've remotely criticised their favourite computer game. And Kickoff and Kickoff II have their places in history, and they're influential and important games, and games with a lot of configurability, and I can imagine you would have had massive fun in an era where you hadn't yet got games like Sensible Soccer. But today, my pinball comment about the ST version stands. It is a game that's better played on the Amiga. We looked at the ST, but ultimately there's too much pinging around of the ball, and I find it too fiddly and frustrating, but it does deserve plus marks for being so configurable. Manchester United Europe, a lot of people had a lot of fun with this back in the day. It looks nice, has a fantastic tune, but ultimately it's a little bit too slow, and I just couldn't get into it. And I had this on my Amiga and John Barnes, and no matter how much I played it, I found it remarkably hard to score against the computer. Two-player can be fun though, especially if you're playing on the same side. Kenny Daglish, World Championship Soccer, and Microprose Soccer. Well, none of these are really 16-bit games, are they? They are basically 8-bit style games ported onto the 16-bit. Kenny Daglish is particularly terrible and reminiscent of so many really bad 8-bit football games. Microprose Soccer, you can play on the C64. I don't think it's the best game on the C64, as so many people seem to think it is, but it's probably the best football game on the C64 and is very enjoyable on that platform. On the Amiga and ST, I'm afraid not. And World Championship Soccer is a terrible port of a fairly mediocre arcade game. Not really worth your time unless you want to watch robots smashing into each other, and if you want that, well, Rise of the Robots is about as much fun as this game. So that's a roundup of 8 football games to check out on your 16-bit home computer, ST or Amiga. Don't think there's going to be any surprises there. Kickoff and Sensible Soccer are of course the highlights, but the one that flies under the radar is Striker, which is also very much worth checking out on the Super Nintendo because it's even better on that platform.